Review book one was allowed the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She is a certified nutrition specialist with a clinical focus on functional nutrition, applied neuroscience, and the gut brain connection, other than Miss Jana Jamail.
Hi.
Welcome, Miss Jana on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, so I'm Jana Jamail. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm very excited to be here. My background is functional nutrition, applied neuroscience, and I use that combination to help people with anxiety, depression, gut health issues, liver detoxification issues. And I also use really fun tools like red light helmet therapy. And I'm also a published researcher in GLP-1 and mitochondria function, and also in red light helmet therapy.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Jana. Thank you. Keep up the good work. So, how chronic a digital overstimulation and environmental stress can keep the brain in heightened stress state? That will be our main topic for today. So, tell us, Miss, we have a public health campaigns about smoking, about sugar, about sedentary behavior. Why is there no public health campaign about chronic digital overstimulation? And do you believe we will eventually look back at a blue light and notification that we now look back the lead paint and asbestos?
So I think there's no campaign because it's completely all media based. And so then we would have to go against the media to say, don't be so connected. Put your phone down. Don't pay attention to the news. Don't have breaking news. Only have what you can actually metabolize mentally daily. And that isn't very good at producing money. So I think it would take a really big change in our culture and society and just how honestly a lot of our governments are even shaped to go, we're probably going to need to have to change the media and how much we're connected. Um, I do think we'll get there one day. We've already seen changes in the age for social media, for who can access social media and if it's healthy or not. And so I think we will get there eventually, but I think it's going to take some time.
Mm, very well said, Miss Jana. So, have you had to describe the baseline nervous system state of the average adult in 2026? What word would you use, and what does the constant low grade activation cause them that they don't even feel anymore?
So I'm going to answer this almost backwards. So I see so many clients who come to me with new autoimmune diseases where they say, I've never felt like this before. I've never had thyroid issues before. I've never had gut issues before. I've never felt like this. And I don't know why I feel like this. And then we work on some things nutritionally. We make sure they have enough protein. We make sure they have enough carbohydrates, but nothing's changing. We're adding supplements. We're doing all the things to change the immune system, and nothing's changing. And so then we have to go, what are you doing in your free time? And most of the time they're saying, I'm doom scrolling, or I live on Instagram, or I can't get over TikTok. And so what I've noticed is what they think is a normal experience of social media is actually this giant anxiety spiral that they're not getting out of. And so it's just constantly a cycle because they're getting so much information metabolized to them at such a quick amount of time, and we've never been designed as humans to do that. Our brain's not designed to take in this much information. It's designed to go outside, notice nature, hear birds, and then take in information in small doses. And so we've kind of reversed that. And so, really, what I've seen is just a nervous system that's overstimulated and almost frayed because that anxiety spiral is just going and going and it does not stop.
Yes, it's true. They said that multitasking to your brain it will alter the function normally.
Mhm.
You argue that environmental stress is not just a metaphor. This is a psychological input. What are the most overlooked sources of environmental stress that have nothing to do with screens but keep the nervous system look in survival mode?
So this gets a little hairy depending on where you live, but there's now a lot of information about something called mycotoxins. And a lot of people aren't familiar with this or they're overly familiar with this. But what mycotoxins are they're toxins that come from mold sources. So that could be from coffee, grains, cereal, a dampened building. So if you inhale all of those spores and you're not very good at detoxing, say that maybe you've had the flu for a long time, or you do have an autoimmune disease, or maybe your gut is just not working great. Maybe you're lean a little bit constipated. So instead of detoxing that, it builds up in the body. And so then you're actually getting more stimulated because you have these mycotoxins circulating. So then you're thinking, wow, I have this weird brain fog. I have so much anxiety. I've never had this before. I really can't concentrate. I just feel off. And sometimes it's actually mycotoxins. It's not just social media or other things.
Like Ms. Jana, if a patient come to you and said, "I don't feel anxious, I just feel tired and all time, and my digestion is shut," how would you help them recognize that they are actually in a chronic stress state, just disassociated one?
So sometimes the first question I ask is, when was the last time you took a vacation and did
Mm-hmm.
not work on that vacation? And more often than not, I'll hear, oh, it's been 2 years. I just had a client tell me she hasn't taken a vacation since 2019. And so I'll say, I don't think this has so much to do with your gut health as much as it has to do with your nervous system and needing to go take a break. So then we just go into lifestyle and we figure out what's going on. How are you not taking care of yourself? And really, the conversation gets into, are you living in your left hemisphere and you're not triggering your right hemisphere where you can downregulate your nervous system?
Very well said, Ms. Jana. Walk me through the neurobiology of a person who starts their daily or day by checking email in bed, scrolls during breakfast, sits under the fluorescent lights, and ends the night with Netflix in bed. What is their brain chemistry actually doing hour by hour?
So that's going to be, again, I'm just going to divide it into left hemisphere and right hemisphere. If you're a neuroscientist listening to this, I know this is not perfect and we don't actually divide everything into right and left, but for this analogy, it helps. So, pretty much what you're doing is you're waking up and you're going into your left hemisphere, which is task oriented. It's going to complete things, it's logical. And so, it's going through that task all day. But when you have an anxiety spiral, so say you woke up and you did email and oh my gosh, you forgot you have this project and now you have to do something else. And so now we've spiked the anxiety. So then what's happening there? We're spiking neurotransmitters. We're getting something active in the left brain. But if you then don't have a solution or you go, oh, I can finish that by 11 o'clock and nothing new comes up, well, then your right hemisphere got triggered and we've completed the cycle. But if you keep staying in the left hemisphere and you're going email, task, social media, fluorescent light, we are just living in left hemisphere. And if you never get to go, I'm going to go take a break and walk outside, we never go over to that right hemisphere. We just stay in that anxiety. So it's not even just what's happening neurochemically in the brain, but then that also triggers a downregulation of neurotransmitters in the gut. So then we're having anxiety in the gut, which can be leaky gut. It downregulates the immune system in the gut. So then there's a whole connection between serotonin and dopamine may not be produced very well because your enzymes aren't being produced in the gut. And then that communication is not happening in the brain. So it's a huge biological cycle that takes over the entire body.
Very well said, Ms. Jana, and thank you for that analogy. Well, you distinguish between acute stress and heightened stress state. What is the difference between the two, and why is the latter so much more dangerous despite of being less dramatic?
Well, if you're in acute stress state, that means you can come out of it. It means you're not in chronic. If you're in a heightened stress state, usually that means it's chronic and you're staying in that stress state. Our bodies aren't meant for that. So if you think about how we're designed, normally if you're sitting in the wild, which not many of us are these days, but if you're sitting in the wild,
Mhm.
you're pretty calm. And then all of a sudden a leopard comes by. You are in an acute stress state. Your body is focused. We are wondering, what are we doing with that? Are we in danger?
Mhm.
Can we sit back? Well, the leopard goes by and it's over. Right now, if you're in a heightened stress state, it means all you think about are leopards going by all day long, whether they're there or not. You're focused on those leopards. And so we're not designed to be in that state, but a lot of us are living in that state because, kind of like you mentioned, emails can feel like a leopard every single day. Tasks can feel like a leopard. Parenting can feel like a leopard. There's so many different things we're exposed to now that feel like leopards. And so instead of just being in a small fear cycle that spikes acute stress, we are in heightened stress where we have fear cycles happening all the time.
Yes. Yes, people, relax. Take a deep breath. And
I don't think I'm helping with that right now.
yes, have a Kit Kat. Oh, I hope you will sponsor Kit Kat, my podcast. So, Miss Jana, dopamine is usually discussed in terms of addiction and pleasure. But what is a dopamine relationship to attention and threat detection, and how does constant dopamine stimulation trick the brain into believing it's under siege?
So, what's interesting about dopamine is most people think of it as the pleasure hormone, but really it's
Mm,
anticipatory. So, if you are anticipating something happening that's good, your dopamine is going to rise. And so, like we kind of mentioned, if you're in that chronic stress, you're chronic anxiety, what are you anticipating that's good as opposed to what are you anticipating that's bad? And so, are we down regulating something there? And then also with gut health, if we don't have great gut health, say that you have loose stool more often, you're not digesting things well, you are not producing those enzymes to create dopamine to help the brain stay in its natural state. And so you're not going to have enough dopamine. Ask me the second part again. I wanted to make sure I answer that as well.
sorry, miss. But what is the dopamine relationship and attention? How does the constant dopamine stimulation trick the brain into believing it's under siege?
Okay, so dopamine can also be inflammatory. A lot of people don't know this. If you are producing too much dopamine, you can actually create neuroinflammation in your brain. And when you have neuroinflammation in your brain, what happens is your mitochondria doesn't function properly, which means the communication between neurons isn't functioning properly. And then we have another cycle going on. So, too much dopamine, we actually have to look at and go, do we need to have a dopamine detox with people? This doesn't happen all the time, but it definitely occurs in autoimmune diseases like PANS, PANDAS, for example, especially in children. And so you can see it where some people are reacting in really aggressive ways, really over the top ways. And again, when you're in some of these heightened states, you can produce too much dopamine, and then you're acting in ways you don't understand. And so we have to look at kind of piecemeal, like what's happening in your life, what's overstimulating you. Do we have too much of a dopamine response? How do we detox that? And then what's the cascade effect going on in the brain? And then how do we calm down that neuroinflammation?
Mm, very well said, Miss Jana. So I learned that our brain cannot detect his own malfunction. Is it true, Miss Jana?
Oh, we don't know so much about the brain. But what I've learned is maybe the brain won't know, but the mitochondria and the actual immune system in the brain might know because it will start reacting and sending cytokines and different things like pro inflammatory cells over to start cleaning up things in the brain. So it may not directly know, but it has an environment that will know.
There's an environment that protect himself,
Mhm.
right? So there's a difference between the brain that is thinking hard and the brain that is overwhelmed. What is the psychological signature of overwhelm, and why can the body distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and the hostile Slack message?
So, what's interesting about overwhelm is that most people don't actually understand overwhelm because if you're in overwhelm, you cannot actually say, I'm overwhelmed. The body starts shutting down because the nervous system can't respond. And so when some people are saying, I'm overwhelmed, and they think it's a saber tooth tiger, they're still functioning. They haven't hit that point where they're literally going to stop working. They're going to sit down and they go into flop. So you might think of it like fight, flight, freeze. We also have fawn and flop. And so once you get into flop, maybe you've been this person where you can't get up during the day. You know you have to go to work, but you just can't get off the couch. And you've been on the couch for 2 weeks and you've called in sick and you can't get there. You're actually thinking there's a saber tooth tiger in the room, but your nervous system is responding in flop.
Again, very empowering, Miss Jana. As a neuronutritionist, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Oh, I would love to work with dementia patients and Parkinson's patients and provide them with nutrition goals and work on the brain's immune system. So many of us just don't understand that antioxidants like vitamin A, C, D, E, K, they're all so important for brain function, as are B vitamins, but it's often overlooked and people don't really think about including nutrition when they think about neurological health. They most often just think, why is this happening? Is there plaque in the brain? Is something else going on? But we really don't think about the metabolism in the brain. And so that's really where I would love to go next.
Yes, looking forward for that, and good luck, Miss Jana, and looking forward for more success. And is it true that, Miss Jana, those people suffering from dementia, they are lack of vitamin D before?
Oh, that is a complex question. Vitamin D absolutely plays a role. Vitamin D is really, really important for brain immune health. So that absolutely affects dementia patients. It's also really hard for some of these patients to absorb vitamin D. So again, we go back
Mm-hmm.
to the gut. If it's not a stable gut, if you're having gastrointestinal issues and you're not absorbing vitamin D, you can't use that in your brain because everything travels between the gut and the brain. So vitamin D absolutely plays a role, but so does gut health.
Mm, very well said. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a neuronutritionist like you?
Oh, don't listen to people who say you can't. So when I wanted to do this, I was told I don't exist. Neuronutritionists
Hmm.
do not exist. You cannot be one. And so I thought, well, I guess I'm going to go be one. I'm going to be a unicorn. So if you
Yes.
love brain health and you love nutrition, go combine them. If you love other organs of the body and you love nutrition, go combine them. There's always a space.
Thank you for that encouraging advice. People, be the unicorn. Don't care what people say about you. Go, 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 and stop procrastinating. Please, please, please share your talents to the world. Make it as your legacy as well. So, Miss Jana, can you please recommend a book or books that influence you, Johnny?
Yes. Okay. So I have a couple. So one of my favorite books is called The Mind Gut Connection by Emerin Meyer, MD. It's this. Oh, let's see if I can put it in front of me. Here we go. Um,
Yes.
I love this book because it does a great job talking about how the gut influences the brain influences the gut. You cannot separate the two of them. And even when you're showing empathy to someone and you're building mirror neurons in your brain, you're also building those mirror neurons in your gut. And so that everything crosses over, everything is connected. And I love that. And then the other book that I really love is it's by Martha Beck, and it's called Beyond Anxiety, Curiosity, Creativity, and Finding Your Life's Purpose. And she does a fantastic job of walking through, even if you're doing everything great lifestyle wise, if you do not close that anxiety loop from your left hemisphere, you're never going to get anywhere with anxiety. And so she gives great information, and it's for the layperson so you can understand neuroscience, but how to get into your right hemisphere. And so one of my favorite things she talks about is how you can do it right now. You close your eyes, you think about one thing you're curious about. So let's say you're really curious about baking or science. You imagine, what would life be like if you lived on Jupiter's moon Titan? What would it smell like? Because our Earth is mineral based. So, what would Titan be like? Is there wind on Titan? Would you get to see Jupiter as a moon? What would the sunrise look like? And when you sit there and you ask those questions and those sensory questions, you actually get out of your left hemisphere and into your right hemisphere. And your anxiety can't exist at the same time.
Yes, thank you for the recommended books, Miss Jana. So, if a child raised birth in an environment of constant notifications, open floor noise, and a visual clutter, do they even know they are dysregulated?
Oh, likely not. No, most people don't know
Yeah.
they're dysregulated.
So, is the chaos their baseline?
Most people don't know what their baseline is. It's so until you take that deep breath and really notice in your gut, like that tight ball moving away and away and away, and you sit there in that for a minute, you really don't know what your baseline is. But you can find your baseline. So if you're having a hard time finding a baseline, you can do something called box breathing. So box breathing means you breathe in for 4 to 5 seconds, you hold it for 10 to 12 seconds, and then you let it out as slowly as possible. And you do that on a loop. I recommend people do this if they ruminate at night as well. Once you process that, then you might actually find your baseline. But most people have no idea what their baseline is.
Very well said, Miss Jana. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course my book 101 review in sixth season as well. Comedy 101 fourth season, and my food 101 in sixth season too. Geography 101, Love Letters, Movie 101, Review, Music 101, our fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in its fourth season, Spiritual Awakening, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Bible Verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Juna, if you could wave a wand and redesign a default human environment, the home, the workplace, the school, the digital interface. What is a single quality you would embed into every space to signal safety of human nervous system?
I would change the idea that you shouldn't do something unless you're going to make money from it. Because then everyone would start doing exactly what they wanted to do and be creative, and everybody would be in their right hemisphere.
Definitely be creative, people, and be a unicorn. Miss Jana irritating. So, Miss Jana, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you are doing right now?
Sure. If you want to be a client, if you're needing some neuronutrition help in your life, you can visit my website at www.roseginger.com.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Jana Jamail because if you support her for sure, more and more empowering neuronutritionists will rise. So, Miss Jana, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Modicon people, see you soon.